Hi, everyone. My name is John DeRosa, and I'm a co-lead for Brown & Caldwell's Pride Alliance Employee Network Group. Thank you for joining our special event today. I want to acknowledge and give a warm welcome to those of you joining from across the country, whether you're from Brown & Caldwell or whether you belong to different organizations. We really hope today's event will be insightful for you, and we're so happy you could tune in. Today's session has really materialized as a result of our recent conversations within Pride Alliance about the significance of Pride Month and National Coming Out Day and other events that highlight the importance of LGBTQ+ experiences and visibility. Today's discussions will be focused on how that visibility relates to the engineering and environmental services industry. We have three extraordinary panelists who are incredibly generous and will be sharing their perspectives as leaders in our industry. They are Pam Elardo, Eric Sandler, and Debra Shore. But before we get to introductions, I'd like to touch on a few housekeeping items. Firstly, we want this session to be as interactive as possible, so please add comments as the event progresses, and we'll do our best to publish those. There will be a brief Q&A session in our agenda, so please type those questions away in the Q&A box as they arise, and perhaps we can get to some of those later on in our session. On that topic, I should mention that when posting, there is an option to include your name or to make your post anonymous if that's your preference, so please be mindful of that. Lastly, I want to preface this session by saying that our panelists are individuals and the experiences they share with us today are the experiences of individuals. And again, we are so thankful to have them here with us. Now to kick things off, I'd like to pass it over to Andrea Hall, Brown & Caldwell's leader of diversity and inclusion. Andrea.
Thank you, John, and thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm really excited about this event and to hear from our panelists, to listen and to learn from them today. This topic is not only near and dear to my heart personally, but also to BC. We're focused on fostering an environment of inclusion, not only in our organization, but in this industry where the LGBT community feels supported and can thrive. Today's discussion really supports our commitment and efforts in that area. Now I'm going to pass it over to Sharon Stecker, Senior Vice President with Brown & Caldwell.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate the introduction, and also want to share that I am a co-executive sponsor of Brown & Caldwell's Pride Alliance CNG, and I'm also a member of the LGBT community. So I'm really excited and very thankful to be here moderating this afternoon, and as John said, welcome our audience and most certainly welcome our panelists. I was very excited when our ENG grassroots leadership team brought forward the idea of assembling a small group of water, wastewater, environmental industry out leaders to join in a discussion, to share some ideas, answer some questions, and just sort of raise awareness in the community and share their personal experiences and thoughts around not only being an out leader at work and in their job, but also in an industry that in some places might have a reputation of not necessarily embracing diversity and inclusivity as progressively as others. So we're excited to be here, excited to be sponsoring this, and I'm excited to be moderating it. Let me share a little bit about what we're going to do over the course of the next hour. We're going to kick things off where I'm going to ask each of our panelists to spend a few minutes talking about themselves. And I'd love to, they can obviously share whatever they want. I'd love to hear a little bit about their background, a little bit about their coming out story, a little bit about their human identity, and even what brought them here today to this panel. And we're then going to move from there into some Q&A that I will lead. We'll then shift to some Q&A from the audience that John will come back to us with. Then I'm going to close us out with a final question for all the panelists, and then some further closing comments. So to kick us off today, unfortunately, Pam Elardo's got some technical difficulties, but it's her voice that we really want to hear, so we're glad she's able to join us here, at least via phone today. And we're going to ask her to introduce herself, then we'll move right to Eric, then we'll move right to Deborah. So go ahead, Pam, tell us a little bit about yourself.
This is really unfortunate. First of all, because I wanted to see everybody, and I look really good right now, okay? But I understand you put up my picture of me in front of the egg digesters with the purple lights in the back, so that'll have to suffice. So I'm going to be pretty brief. I'm sorry for this technical difficulty. It's been a very challenging last 45 minutes trying to get in. I'm asked to introduce myself and my organization and my background and such, and I'm in the Bureau of Wastewater Treatment in New York City. I've been here for 5 years. It's the largest wastewater utility in the United States. And prior to here, I had a 30-year career, both as a Clean Water Act regulator and also as a wastewater utility director in the state of Washington, primarily Seattle metro area. Professional background, I've been an environmentalist since the 3rd grade. And I grew up in suburban Chicago, so I had to kind of come out about that as a youngster, to be honest. And then I started engineering school in 1979. There weren't very many women. I came out to myself fully in mid-college after that entire lifetime of really being suspicious, worried about it, and being stressed about it. And the way I put it is back then, people would say, oh, it's a choice if you're gay. Well, and my response was, if I had a choice, why would I choose this, right? Why would I choose to be the thing that everybody hates? Like, really? So it makes you come to terms that it's really who I am and who we are as a community. But at that time, there wasn't much support or understanding of the culture of us in the culture outside of the tight-knit gay and lesbian community. And in fact, the very first gay pride march I went to, I had friends who were teachers. They literally had to wear bags over their heads, paper bags, to march in a gay pride parade, because they knew if somebody saw them or if they were on TV or somebody took a picture, they would lose their jobs. So, that was a reality. And my coming out story at work is to state that after college, I worked internationally. I actually was a Peace Corps volunteer. I had to manage being out pretty tightly, even amongst my American peers. But returning to the United States, I was a rare woman in my field still. I started working in Washington, and being gay in the workplace was stressful. Back then, coming out took the form of having a talk with people who I could trust after they may have made assumptions about me or if I felt close enough to them. And that was very stressful. There was a lot of potential fear. There was a lot of fear for potential rejection, actually. So it was tough. But, in the last 10 to 20 years, I don't have the talk anymore because I'm just myself. It comes up that I'm married, and I'm married to Kim. That's her name. And the thing that's a little interesting for me now, being in New York City, is that my environment around just like the gay culture in the workplace itself feels like the West Coast in the 1980s, to be honest, because I think like the public utility East Coast world is slow to change, and it's just a different scene than the West Coast. So just kind of in closing, I was asked why am I here today? And there's a couple interesting things to share about that. There's two, and the first of all, it's because I wish I had the me version of me today, the today version of me, around when I was early in my career. That would have been so nice for me. And maybe I'm making it a little bit easier for somebody else to be comfortable with who they are. And maybe I can continue to be a role model for folks. Secondly, and this is more interesting, why I'm here today, because I am surprised that once I decided to do this, and it made me reflect on my environment now in terms of, quote, coming out. It's still stressful for me, and it's quite stressful when I'm in a large group. I never say in a large group, hey, I'm a lesbian. I never say that. It's always like an interpersonal experience. So like if I'm in front of, a team and we're talking diversity, I don't say that. It's too hard. And I think it's because when it's anonymous, I'm feeling more vulnerable. So this event, even like preparing for it, it made me stressed out in ways that kind of surprised me. So the bottom line is being a minority in any context has stress. It has its stress. And dealing with it really is a journey. And that journey can change. It can get easier, but it doesn't end. So I take this opportunity today as an opportunity for not just the event and advancing our cause and being less invisible, but also as part of my personal journey. And I want to thank everybody for setting this up and kind of making myself do this with you all. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Eric.
I'm Eric Sandler. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Business Services and the Chief Financial Officer of the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. Just for a little background on the organization, we are a water, power, and wastewater utility serving 2.7 million end users in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're the third largest municipal utility in California, 2,400 employees. We have a $1.5 billion annual operating budget, $9 billion 10-year capital budget. The group I manage has about 300 people. It's comprised of financial services, information technology services, customer services, fleet, and strategy, innovation, and change. I think culturally, there are some features about the PUC that are important with respect to the experience of LGBT people. We're a department of the City and County of San Francisco. So we're a large department. We're 11% of the entire city budget, and elements of our organization, mostly the administrative pieces, but also kind of the planning functions, have some of the demographics and organizational culture characteristics you'd expect of a mid-sized, coastal, very progressive city. On the other hand, there are other elements of the organization, those that have a heavy focus on trades, more conservative, they have more conservative cultural characteristics that might be more typical of a special district utility. And then geographically, we really span a huge part of swath of California from the coast all the way. We have operations up in the Sierras, and those that area of our organization has a different culture. Professionally and personally, because so much has changed in the culture at large for regarding attitudes toward and acceptance of LGBTQ people, I think it's important for my comments to center them in some chronology and geography. I'm 54. I graduated from high school in 1984. I moved to the Bay Area to go to college. I went to Stanford, received a degree in biology. And it's important to keep in mind what was going on in the country at that time. I mean, Ronald Reagan was president, lots of anti-gay initiatives. The plague of AIDS was terrifying. There was no cocktails or protease inhibitors. It was terrifying, and there was extraordinary discrimination against LGBT people. Gay men were really under attack. The government turned its back on our community. And I remember really the women, the lesbians who really supported the community during that time. So I entered the workforce in '88 and worked in infrastructure development and finance. So Lehman Brothers in the public finance group in San Francisco. I moved to Argentina working for a merchant bank, working on privatization and deregulation in the energy sector, natural gas and utility and electric utilities. I moved back to the US, worked in alternative energy, developing wind power throughout the world, and went back to business school 10 years later after graduating from undergrad, went to Berkeley, had a little stint in venture capital for a few years, but the past 20, I've been at a public utility manager in California, not only at the PUC, but also at a number of different organizations, 2 special districts, San Diego County Water Authority, East Bay Mud. So I've been able to be an executive at a number of different organizations with very different cultures. And let's see, why I'm willing to join this conversation. It's easy to forget the impact that people have had on me, and that impact of seeing other out LGBT folks have had on me. So when my assistant Corey, who was also a member of our community, shared that I had got this email from Cindy, I was really excited and very happy to participate.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm Deborah Shore. I'm a member of the Board of Commissioners of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, which is the agency that treats sewage and manages stormwater for Chicago and 128 other municipalities in Cook County. I'm an elected official and a member of a board of 9 commissioners who are elected at large in Cook County, which is the second largest county in the country, for 6-year terms. And I've now in my 3rd term. I was first elected in 2006. I'm not an engineer. I was a writer and editor. And let me put in a plug. I'm a big fan of BC Water News. And any of you out there who don't read it, I urge you to subscribe. Newsy and well-written, and I enjoy it a lot. But I was a conservation advocate. My favorite volunteer activity for many years has been to do habitat restoration in the Cook County Forest Preserves. And through that work, I learned a great deal about the rare nature that still exists interwoven in the great metropolis of Chicago, the efforts of many people to try to restore our native prairies and oak woods and wetlands. And that led me to be more involved politically, because many of these areas were neglected by those who had been charged with their care. And so I started advocating for more resources, volunteering to elect more reform-minded people to the Cook County Board, which has oversight over the forest preserves and so forth. And I thought someday I might run for the Cook County Board, and went through a women's candidate training program that the Democratic Women in Illinois launched. And shortly thereafter, someone approached me and said, would you consider running for the board of the Water Reclamation District? I knew what they did, and I happen to believe that water is going to be the issue in years to come. Of course, in many places it already is. And this agency, with its role in treating used water and managing stormwater, has oversight over several of the legs of our freshwater ecosystem. And so I thought perhaps I would have something to bring to the board. When I ran, I was the first person in 20 years to run with any kind of conservation credentials for this important seat. Go figure, right? And but I was able to get a number of endorsements and run a good campaign, and I was elected in 2006 without the support of the Cook County Democratic Party. And I was out. I got the support of a number of LGBTQ organizations, and they asked that you be openly gay to receive their endorsement. And one question has, well, what does that mean to be openly gay? I did list my partner at the time, now my spouse, on my website and resume. But in my race, you're running, it's such a large jurisdiction, and 3 people are being elected for 3 seats in that election. So you don't really go after each other. Nobody's paying attention. Very few people know really what the agency does. So the fact that I was a gay woman wasn't really an issue in my election, but even in Cook County for other seats on the Chicago City Council or Township Clerk, we have seen homophobic or transphobic issues or elements in elections. But I was the first person in Cook County who was openly gay to win election for a non-judicial post in late 2006. And why I'm joining this conversation is because I think as I do public speaking and as I'm out on the campaign trail, many people have said to me, thank you for running, thank you for being a model. I have a son, a daughter, a relative who's a member of the LGBTQ community, and it's great to see role models like you out there. So happily, our board of 9 is now a majority female board and a majority minority board. And we were joined by a gay man, Marcelino Garcia, member of the Latino community as well, 2 years ago. I would just say about the agency, we have a $1 billion budget, operate 7 wastewater treatment plants, and have just under 2,000 employees. But I'm in effect up on the balcony sitting in the board of directors. So thank you for including me in this conversation today. I look forward to sharing more with you.
Thank you all very much. Let me sort of be clear. I am not confused. You are all incredible role models, and your level of truth and vulnerability is inspiring. So thank you for those introductions. Appreciate those brief stories, and let's go to some questions. And I'm gonna go back and ask a question to Pam. Hopefully she's still with us and able to hear me, and we're able to hear her. But you know, she was so detailed in her first response that I'm going to tweak the question that I was intending on asking a bit, and really focus a bit to get your perspective, Pam, on the industry. And again, the water, wastewater, environmental industry. What are your thoughts on how, and I don't even know if I want to go into sort of the why, but more the how moving forward, do you think we could make the industry more diverse and inclusive?
Okay, so it's, thanks for asking that. Our industry is changing. It's changing slowly, but we're still quite male dominated, conservative. There's a big blue collar component as well, which makes it kind of interesting. I described earlier that it is stressful for me when I'm in a setting without interpersonal interaction. That's probably true for others, but if we maintain being invisible in our surroundings, that's not going to change. So our workplaces, our industry's largest organizations, institutions, conferences, any place that we're in, space should really be made for us. When I first thought about that, I thought, well, space should be made for us, but we should make more space for us. We, as members of our gay community and trans community and all the else that belongs in our community and in the larger culture, right? So we become more visible. I think it's really interesting that this session is called Visibility and Inclusion. The word visibility appears, and I really had to reflect on that a little bit, because we usually talk about diversity and inclusion, but this is a little bit of a twist, because diversity in this context and maybe other contexts may not be obvious. It may not be visible or reachable, or people don't understand it because it is invisible. So I put it upon us to organize ourselves, dedicate some efforts, bring in some allies, bring our community to be less invisible. I am, it's funny when some things pop up just when you need them. So yesterday, I was in a virtual session on health disparities, for example, and there was a quote someone presented from the African-American author, gay man, James Baldwin, and this quote is, "Not everything faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." I want to repeat that because I believe it deserves it. And that is, not everything faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And I think that's very instructive for what we're trying to do here. And there are very practical things we could do. For starters, after this discussion, let's have more discussions like this. Let's work within existing organizations and be more visible, be more affirming, partner with external organizations to do the same. So I feel like maybe we're kicking off something here. I really appreciate the format and the platform to do this. I know that my colleagues who are on this as well have some great ideas, and they've got existing efforts. And with that, I think I'll just pass the baton off to whoever's next. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Pam. I agree with you 100%. The dialogue can be such a strong impetus, and the discussions that we're starting today. I do equally hope that this is the first of many to come. And you know, next time we'll make sure we get your video right. But you know, appreciate that perspective. You know, let's shift. Let me tee up a question for Eric. And again, in your introductory comments, you gave some great reflection, but maybe give a little bit further context of how personally coming out in the workplace has helped you. Has it helped your career? Has it hindered your career in any way? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sharon, for this question. And I'd say I just wanted to build on something that Pam mentioned briefly in her introductory comments about coming out being this process. And, you know, I know that, you know, I thought at 18 or 20, I had kind of come out and I was good with myself. And, you know, I just think it's peeling layers of an onion. There's always a new relationship of identity to world that unfolds. And for me, I think being out in my profession became very meaningful when I took on more of a leadership role in the organizations that I worked in. And, you know, as I developed my own sense of leadership, you know, I struggled initially with, oh, I need to look like this patriarchal idea of a leader with kind of who knows exactly what to do and tells, you know, and has a command and control structure. And, you know, I quickly sort of leaned into my own experience coming out and living in the world as an authentic version of myself and an integrated human being, and, you know, saw that I could actually be successful as a leader in my own skin, in my own unique way, drawing on my own strengths. So I think being out and kind of an integrated person and honest has been helpful as a leader, you know, and I've showed up in some pretty conservative organizations and been able to be effective. And I think, you know, I've really drawn on my own, you know, empathy, ability to relate to people as individuals, understand their needs, their differences. It's been helpful in motivating teams, developing people, and mentoring people, and particularly women and people of color whom I've worked with and helped mentor and develop in finding their own unique and authentic leadership strengths, and, you know, how to grow into that. And then I'd say, secondly, it's helped me in partnering and building relationships sort of with, you know, when I was in San Diego, we worked with the Imperial Irrigation District, and we're working, you know, we often work, well, actually in San Diego and at the PUC, we work with irrigation districts and farmers and folks who are very different from kind of the coastal urban water users. And I've been able to, you know, showing up as a real person, develop effective partnerships there. So those are some of the ways that it's been helpful for me. And I'm trying to keep my response sort of short. So Sharon, I'll pass it to you, and then Deborah.
Thank you so much. Appreciated that perspective. Thank you. So our third question goes to Deborah, and this one is more about how organizations can make a broader impact on the LGBTQ plus, you know, community from a business perspective, from an equity and equality standpoint. And we're curious if you've got an example of an effort your organization or things you're thinking about relative to opening up opportunities to business with LGBTQ owners, students, scholarships, things like that, local community partnerships. Any insight there you can share?
Thank you, Sharon, for that. And I do have some things to share. The Water Reclamation District, as I noted earlier, is a large agency, at least in dollars, and we award hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts for both goods, services, construction, a range of things every year. We do have an affirmative action program and have goals for numerical goals for women-owned, minority-owned, small business in our contracts. And we began to look at whether we could have similar goals for LGBTQ-owned companies. Currently, we can't because we don't have a disparity study, as it's called, to demonstrate that there is discrimination in the marketplace. But we have a disparity study underway, and they're going to try to look at some of that. But we did adopt a policy within the last year and a half, directing staff to do more, to reach out to LGBT-owned businesses. There is a national LGBT Chamber of Commerce that has a certification program for LGBTQ-owned businesses, and to do more in terms of our outreach efforts when we have events to introduce the work of the district to the business community, to really try to publicize that as well through the community of LGBTQ. There's a local chamber in Chicago and so on. I want to add that just last month, the mayor of Houston issued an executive order there seeking to provide inclusion and opportunity initiative for LGBTQ businesses there. And we're going to be seeing more of this around the country. But ironically, and it's been pointed out that if you're a gay woman, you can qualify as a woman-owned business, or if you're Black, you can, male or female, you can qualify as a minority business. So the only category that really doesn't currently qualify under the affirmative action goals are white men. And gay or straight or binary, whatever. So it is a bit delicate, but we are looking into it and trying to do much more. Thank you, Sharon.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I think what we're going to do now is tee up John to come back to us, and he can ask a few more questions and do a little round robin.
Thanks, Sharon. I just want to say I'm not alone in saying that we are so grateful for this discussion that's happening, and it's been so enriching. So thank you to our panelists for being so open and honest in these answers. Our first question is directed towards Pam Elardo, and it reads, what advice would you give to someone who is hesitant to be out in the workplace today?
I have 3 reasons. First, like I said earlier, because I wish I had the today version of me around when I was early in my career. And someone else maybe is benefiting from me being the present version of me in their career. And I think it's super important considering that some people watching this and some people in their lives are in less accepting circumstances. Maybe they're in a very conservative environment at work. They're super uncomfortable being out as a gay person. Maybe they're in a rural area, or maybe their families are not accepting. So I do think just being who we are is very important. Second reason, it makes my life way easier to be out at work. So I advise you to be out at work, because generally, if you feel safe, it makes your life easier. I get to bring myself. I get to bring me to work. I get to bring my whole self to work. I like myself. I get to talk about my amazing wife named Kim, who's awesome. And I don't want to deny that part of myself. We have 2 daughters. It's amazing. It's great. You know, I have a full life, and I love it, and I feel very blessed for what I have. Third reason, and this is the most important one, and that is because being invisible actually puts us as individuals and as a community at risk. Ignorance and hate against us as individuals makes us targets for hate crimes. You know, people get beat up. Some people get murdered. It still happens. It's a bad thing. So it's important for us to be out for that reason. And ignorance and hate on a broader scale makes it way easier for legislators, for healthcare professionals, for law enforcement, all of that to discriminate against us and to harm us through legislation, through broad actions, and in many very significant ways. So those are my 3 reasons why it's important to be out at work. And I advise and hope that we can all move in that direction together as a community and with our supporters and allies. And I'd like to conclude by saying those of us who can really have a duty to be visible and to take all that goes along with it. It's really an obligation to push for a more just, equitable, safe society for everybody. So that's my concluding statement there. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Pam. My next question is directed towards Eric, and it reads, what challenges do you still face today in your career as a member of the LGBTQ plus community?
It's a good question. I think there are challenges that I'm sort of aware of that I currently face. I suppose, one of the, maybe a way to reframe that is, I've been fortunate to be in environments that have not been really personally challenging or hurtful. I come to the conversation as a cis white man with, a lot of privilege and, a good education and lots of opportunity. So I think, the challenge is to recognize that I actually, because I have that position, being out and more visible and more vocal, a member of my community is important. So I think that was commented on earlier. It's easy to take for granted some of the benefits that I get to enjoy because of all of the people that went before me. And so I guess the challenge would be how to stay visible as an LGBT leader and not just a leader in my organization.
Thank you, Eric. We have another question, and I will direct this one towards Deborah. And it reads, how do you think that cisgender members of the LGBTQ plus community can help to support and uplift their transgender counterparts in the workplace?
That's a good question. Sir, I would say talk with them, ask them what they need, what they want, what would be helpful. Invite them to join you as a guest at lectures, luncheons, be visible, and call out bad behavior and insensitive language if you encounter it. Just be an ally and mostly talk to transgender men and women about what that means for them. What are they looking for? I think that's how I would answer that.
Thank you, Deborah. I do have a follow-up question that is related to that a little bit, and it asks, if your organization could do one thing to make the workplace culture more welcoming, inclusive, and supportive to LGBTQ plus people, what would that be?
After I joined the board, I don't know if I can think of a single thing, but after I joined the board, I asked whether our agency could participate in the annual Pride Parade in Chicago. And the parade had been underway for many years. We have a float that is in the Columbus Day Parade and St. Patrick's Parade, never been in the Pride Parade. So they said, yes, we can do it. And So we did, and we had a truck with 2 district employees pulling the float with a image of, we have what's called deep tunnel, is a deep underground reservoir. And so there was this sort of opening of a deep tunnel, which, as you can imagine, as we're driving through the throngs of people, and people would shout out, "So how deep is your tunnel?" But when the parade was over, I mean, it was a great experience, warm and great reception. And we were probably number 53 out of 250 entries. And at the end, I go up to thank the 2 district employees who had driven the truck, and they said they had a wonderful experience. And they said, next year, do you think we could be a little further back in the line? And I said, really, why would you want to do that? And they said, well, more overtime. But 2 years ago was the first time we raised the Pride flag during Pride Month outside of our headquarters, and we tried to have a Pride Month celebration. And it's just being visible. I think doing more to show that you're there, and that many others can come out from the treatment plants and so on and demonstrate that they're part of the community, and we welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. The next question is directed towards Pam, and it reads, what is the biggest challenge you've had to overcome in your career?
Wow. Wow, that's a good question. I can't think of one thing. I think in general, and this kind of goes to my upbringing, my lack of role models, etc. I grew up in a very conservative environment, very sexist in many ways, given that no one expected me to have a career. There was assumptions made about what I would do with my life, primarily based on who I would marry, presumably a man, obviously. And I really came out of that, and I don't necessarily blame that environment, but the result of whatever that was, I came out with not a lot of confidence. And even though I was, stellar in school, National Honor Society, go to Northwestern University, got a chemical engineering degree, Tau Beta Pi, all that, I still lacked confidence. And I think being able to get over that hurdle just by looking at the evidence of what I can do and have done, and I'm, if there's something I'm impressed with myself about, is despite the lack of confidence, I had courage to put myself out there and make myself do stuff, and just kind of not think about it too much, while inside I might have been super stressed out. So I think it might be pretty common for people who are minorities in any context that the assumptions around you is you can't do it. You can't do what you can do, really. And so it makes it challenging psychologically, and it takes a lot to get over it. And I have a lot of respect for people who excel in their careers despite those kinds of barriers. But I think that generally has been a lifelong challenge for me. And I think now I exude confidence, and I think it's for the most part, it's kind of authentic, but it's taken a long time for me to feel comfortable with my success and give myself credit for achieving thus far what I have.
I think there was a question that came through about whether I feel I need to be more effective in order to overcome discrimination, or the need to represent LGBT folks. I do think there is that tendency. There is I think there is, I grew up with sort of this overachieving layer of behavior that was about overcompensating for, feeling less than in terms of sexuality. So I do think that there is, I have this inclination to, if I do an exceptional job, then I'll be okay. And I, so I have a hard time sometimes determining what's enough and what's, too much in terms of performance. And sometimes, maybe spend a little more personal effort or energy than might be really required to do a very good job.
All right, John, looks like it's kicked back to me for our final round of questions here in our final minutes. So sort of we've got some overlapping topics we've heard about already, so I'm going to do this in sort of an or manner. I'm going to throw a couple of different questions out and let you pick and choose which ones you want to answer, and we'll go back and start again with Pam, and then go to Eric, and then go to Deborah, and then I'll close us out here in these final minutes. So a couple questions to think about. One is, again, Pam answered this already, but the importance of being out at work. And or if you'd like to answer, an example of someone who's impacted you along the way, an out role model, or even, a non-community role model who has supported you through this process that is worthy of acknowledgement. So again, let's go back to Pam and finish us up here at this final answer.
So has there been a role model? I was thinking about this I think about this in context of being a woman in our field, being a gay woman in our field. And often when I meet women who I work with who are successful, I say, well, how'd you get here? Like, what was it? Sometimes it was a mentor, sometimes it was because their dad thought they were brilliant and supported them. In my case, I think I told you from third grade I was an environmentalist. I just had such passion for the field that's what made me thrive and drive myself into it and stick with it and do everything that I've done. And I really hope that this helps everyone have role models, because it's sorely needed, and I hope I'm that for people. And I really appreciate this foundational experience for me to perhaps be more of that. But.
Thank you. We'll go to Eric.
Thank you. So I love this question. It's important to be out at work because the pendulum can swing. Right now it feels like there's broader acceptance, at least in parts of our culture, of LGBT folks. I'm also Jewish, and my mom and grandparents came to the US in 1949 after surviving the Holocaust. And and you can see, there's a history of like acceptance and rejection in my Jewish history. And we can see what's happening over the past 4 years with violence against, our AAPI brothers and sisters. So I just think, staying quiet, not being visible is not we can't rely on the arc of progress to continue to go in only one direction. And so I think it's important to be out for that reason. And then in terms of how someone has impacted being out in my life, I remember when I came out to my parents when I was still in college, they were concerned that it would be, the death knell for my career. Things would be harder and more difficult. And I was really convinced. I'm like, you haven't lived in California, Mom and Dad, it's different. And certainly I had a fortunate situation being at an investment bank that was in the Bay Area and fairly open. But I remember hearing about a guy named Ed Harrington, who at the time was the finance director of the organization I'm at now, who was out and gay and respected and a leader. And I filed that in my mind. I remembered, I'm like, oh, there's someone named Ed who's out and the head of a big organization. You know, and who knew that like 30 years later, I'd be in that role, you know? So being a role model for others is critical. Thank you.
Thank you. And final answer there from Deborah.
Thank you, Sharon. I'll try to be brief. You may have heard the saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. When we're at the table, when budgets are being crafted, when policies are being made, we get to say, we get to ask. I'll give you one quick example. When I joined the Water Reclamation Board, there were no marriage equality, no civil unions. And I asked the executive director, do you think we could pass a policy allowing domestic partners of our employees to qualify for health benefits? And he said, I don't see why not. And we did that unanimously. And we opened it up to domestic partners of same-sex and opposite-sex couples. And when I asked him why the district hadn't done that before, he said to me, nobody asked. My point is, we ask and we get things done for our community, and that benefits others as well. And I'm happy to be a part of that. Thank you for including me today.
Thank you so much. And again, thank all of our panelists. Thank our participants on the outside. There has been some chatter in the chat, you know, that's been very positive, and thankful to our panelists for being so open to us today. And I'm, you know, very confident that discussions like these are going to go a long way, so that folks, everyone in the LGBTQ community can, you know, be out and equal at work. You know, thank you so much. And before we hang up, I also want to acknowledge that these events don't happen by themselves. And there was a lot of people behind the scenes pulling this together, but I'd be remiss if I didn't call out John DeRosa and Will Quantz for their lift on this. Really well done, guys. Thank you so much. So with that, we will sign off and wish everyone a great weekend.